Peace and blessings to you. My name is Jere B. I am the EntreMusician, and so are you. Hey, welcome to another edition. I feel pretty excited about this edition of the EntreMusician because I get to bare my soul. I get to confess some of my sins before you. Made a lot of mistakes, and I want to share with you the 7 major mistakes that I've made as a band leader. Now, as a band leader, John Maxwell has this wonderful book called Failing Forward. And in it, no matter what your profession is, you're going to learn that if you're the band leader, if you're the leader, if you're in charge, then you're going to make some major mistakes. And, you know, there's a tendency to feel very bad about that because, oh, man, I screwed up. Yeah, well, you know, many times you're out there in unfamiliar territory. You're a pioneer. You're cutting down some things that you go, oh, I didn't need to cut that down. Or you're discovering some things that you didn't know, and hey, it's okay as long as you learn and grow. So what I want to do is, in this edition, share with you some blunders that I've made in various stages of my career. As you know, all of our videos are brought to you from the wonderful people at Vocal. Vocal is the only beverage on the planet which is designed to soothe, refresh, and restore your voice. Your voice is the only instrument that you cannot buy. So if you talk all day, like I sometimes do, or sing all night, then get yourself some Vocal. Go to drinkvocal.com to learn more. All right, here we go. 7 huge, major mistakes that I've made as a band leader. Number 1. I have failed to plan. And that has happened at the beginning. I'll tell you that story. And in various projects that I've worked on, the adage is true that if you fail to plan, then you really plan to fail. If you don't write it down, if you don't put together a team, if you don't have a strategy, a goal, if you're not thinking beginning with the end in mind, like Stephen Covey says, if you don't do that, then actually things are going to fall apart, and they're going to fall apart quickly. So there were serious situations where in 4 or 5 different big places in my career where I failed to plan, and it came back to bite me real hard. I can remember even at the very beginning in 2002 when we were putting SounDoctrine together, and we were working on the first SounDoctrine album, which is called Perseverance, the soundtrack to a non-existent movie. I'm sitting there in the studio. I'm just happy that I've compiled all of these songs. We've arranged to get all of the singers and instrumentalists that I want to guest solo on this project. And I'm sitting there and we're recording, and thank God for a brother named Rick Wilmich. We were doing it in his home studio. He had the bomb home studio at the time. And so Rick is sitting over here and I'm listening, and the track is really pumping. I mean, we're doing it, right? So I think we're into like the 8th song, and Rick asked, okay, so what are you gonna do? I'm like lining up, hey, here's the next song, here's what he says, no, I don't mean that. I mean, so what are you gonna do after you're done recording? How are you gonna sell it? What do you know? I haven't even thought about that. I hadn't thought about it, man. All my thoughts were on getting the recording done, having Rick mix the project, and then I'll figure it out as I go along. But Rick Wilmich, he was the one that said, look, you're gonna need to put together, you're gonna release it on CD, what's gonna happen? In 2002, at that time, CD Baby was a new company, and I had to really go home and do some homework. How is this gonna happen? How are we gonna do this? Boom, boom, boom. There were several other times also in subsequent years where a project or situation would come about, and I found that the biggest times that failure really hit me hard was when Jere did not think through the process. Jere did not plan accordingly. So that's number 1. I failed to plan. Number 2 was that I was not paying close enough attention to the numbers. In another video, I have the EntreMusician and their team, their business team, your accountant, your attorney, your business manager. Please go and watch that video, especially if you are putting a new band or organization together, because you have to have your business on point. I'm not a numbers guy. I'm just admitting that right off the bat. And I have on my team a person who is just diligent, even to the point of being with numbers, but that's his thing. His name is Sterling Williams. And early in the game, he was telling me, that doesn't make sense for you to do that show. Do you know how much it costs to do this? Do you know how much, are your CDs per unit? How much? Oh man, that stuff is like, I'm an artist, man. I just want to play my music. But I've learned that if you don't pay attention to the numbers, then you don't know how to adequately charge for the gig. You don't know how to price your merch, price your CDs, price your downloads. Somebody's taking a cut. What are you actually making? And man, I went in the hole more times than you can count. Some of those holes I named because, wow, that was a deep one right there. Because you can get in trouble with your taxes and, the government wants this and you have to file for that and you need to do that. So do pay attention to your numbers. Now, number 3 is kind of closely related, and we'll talk about that as I move forward. But early on, especially, I was doing too many promotional gigs. And I know. It's like a chicken and egg concept with new bands especially because, hey, you got to get out there to get exposure. And you can't get exposure unless you get out there. And, it's like nobody's going to pay you because nobody knows you. You understand what I'm saying? And it's like, wow. But, looking back, I'm not going to blame it on anybody else because I was the band leader. Buck stops here. I was not smart enough to say, okay, so we did that gig and we do this other gig, and those were free gigs. Those were promotional. Those were for exposure. But thank God it didn't take me so long to learn, even though I felt like, we did 20 promotional gigs that we should not have done. We should have begun charging earlier than we did. But I'll tell you what I learned. What I learned was the fact that there were people who were saying, oh, you're going to get exposure. So we go to Cleveland or we go to Akron or we go to wherever for this promotional gig to get exposure to a fan base that we were trying to link to and did not have. And what they would say is that, well, we do this every year or we do this every 6 months. And so the next time that you come, we're going to, compensate you. They never call back. They would never, ever call back. And so that was a big lesson for me to learn. It was a major mistake because you have to give up some gravy now and again. Somebody put it this way, that you have to give up some cake you have to give up some cake to justify having a cake in the first place. But how much of that cake you give up, especially if you're giving away the whole thing, you really need to think about that, especially early on. I mean, you're going to have to do it, but are you going to do it for 6 months? Are you going to do it for 3 months? At what point? And do you begin this escalating scale of saying, we'll do it for this, then that, then that? Make that decision early on in the game because we did far too many promotional gigs. Number 4, early on, again, this was early on, haven't looked back since, but signing agreements. Make sure you have documentation between you and the promoter, you and the club owner, whether or not you're using a booking agent. What you want to do is make sure that you have documentation because early on, hey, gig pays $850. Okay, cool. And we show up and we play. Yeah. There's a problem. See, here's what you should know right off the bat is the fact that you can't repossess a gig. Learn that early on in the game. Anything else, any other product, there's an exchange. And usually it's a tangible product that, if you're not making your house payment, if you're not making your car note, if you go to the store and you buy a certain widget and the widget doesn't work right, you can return the widget and get your money back. But you cannot get your performance back. It's done. The crowd was wild, yeah, but the person doesn't have your money. And so it took just enough time for me to say, yo, we're going to put this in stone. We're going to document this. I'm going to receive a deposit. Here's where the balance is due. And make sure the balance is due. Maybe we'll do another video on this, but make sure the balance is due before you hit your first note on stage. You've got to be paid in full. I'm here, and a good place to do that is right after sound check, because that shows the club owner, it shows the promoter, it shows the person booking you at that venue that in good faith effort, we're all here. Sound engineer has plugged in everything. We're ready to go. Now pay us. And that's what should happen. So I was operating for a time on word of mouth, on their good faith effort, and sometimes traveling some miles in order to get stuck. So you don't want to do that. Number 5 kind of goes hand in hand with that, because we were doing too little promotion on the gigs, and there's no excuse for that now. I mean, we have Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. You have all of these tools, which if you have a show that's booked, you can just pretty much put the word out there. And there's a couple of things I want to say about this. Now, first of all, at first we were doing too little promotion. Okay, so we were doing this promotion whereby, before Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter came along, there were posters. And so there was the cost of the posters, and there was Kinko's copies, and there was, my grandmother has a printer. You know what I'm saying? There was makeshift ways of doing it, but it doesn't look right, or this wasn't it, and you'd spend too much time and money, and you'd expect that sometimes that your family and friends would just show up so that you don't have to do promotion. Not a good idea. Just not a good idea. So we had to develop a system whereby every time, and that goes with putting a team together, but every time we were going somewhere where everything was just flowing, and I'm talking about weeks in advance. And let me say this one other thing about this promotional aspect of it is, you want to make sure that you promote to the masses many, 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 many times. I mean, you look at TV commercials, you look at movie trailers, you look at radio commercials or what have you, and that company is constantly putting their product or their service before the people because they're mass appeal. But when you begin to engage in your fan base and you have the email addresses, you want to make sure that you're consistent, but that you don't bombard them, because then you become a pest, and then your emails get deleted because you sent me that yesterday. Yeah, I know you're going to be at Joe's Cafe next Thursday. You don't want to do that. So to the masses, you want to make sure you have a consistent strategy and you're hitting it and people are able to see it. You're setting the event up, boom, boom, boom. But to your personal email list, you want to be engaging, but you don't want to be a pest. My problem was at the beginning, we were doing too little of promotional efforts in order to get people in the seats at the gig. Number 6 goes along with what I was talking about in doing too many promotional gigs. Well, number 6 was when I began charging, I wasn't charging enough. And here's why. I did not gauge the popularity or the momentum that we were building among the fan base, okay? So the promoters, the club owners, the venue owners, the people who book you, they are looking at the percentage that they're going to keep in their pocket. So they always want you to feel as if, I shouldn't say always, but almost always. How's that? They want you to feel as if you are not going to draw the crowd. But if you've done your promotion, if you're building up your fan base, then you need to have some confidence in yourself. Now, you got to do the work, but you have to push back a little bit when they say, okay, we're offering you this, juice that mug up, $150. $200, because what it will do is it will boost your confidence. It will show them that, you know, you're not just going to sign on the dotted line. You know who you are. You know what your music is worth, what your performance is like. You have built, you know what happened last week or last month and what has been building. And so, yo, do it. I can remember the very first time that I actually charged some very real money. Here's the thing that happened. I charged some very real money for the band, and the guy said, okay. Two things happened. First of all, I was overjoyed because, I mean, I charged this dude $1 for our band performing for their engagement. Then it was like, I should have said, right? Because I didn't know it was going to be that easy. And I thought, wait a minute, Jere, you don't know what you have. And by the way, I did compensate the guys accordingly. It wasn't just like, yo, you know, but this was a big organization. I felt I should shoot my shot at that point, and it worked. So yeah, being overjoyed and then going, man, what are we really worth? Because I didn't know. I hadn't done my homework, but I decided to do it at that point. And so the next time that we were going to do this and they said, well, we're here, it was like, no, because last week I got that. You dig it? So that's what you want to do. You want to make sure you know the worth of your band, the worth of your artistry, and you want to charge accordingly. And don't be afraid to say no. Let me just stick this in here. This is a freebie. This is not even on the list right here. Don't be afraid to say no, thank you. Because that's going to win you some points in the mind of the other guy. If you are willing to walk away from a shoddy deal, or maybe let's say it's not shoddy, but it's not what you think is best for you and your band, say thank you very much. And then see what happens next time. Because if you are who you say you are, and if you're pushing and hustling the way you should, then you're going to get a call back from that guy or that woman. And they're going to say, well, you know, and the price just went up. Can you dig it? So I want you to really think about that. My mistake was I didn't charge enough for the gigs. Your solution is know what your music is worth and charge accordingly. The final thing that I found, and it's been like this, I can't say that I've arrived here. Remember, I'm confessing my soul before you. I haven't arrived, but I need to stay focused. I'm the type of personality that there are many things that have my attention. And so, you know, while I'm dealing with a particular project, whether it be a performance or whether it will be a recording project or whatever it is, I have to be very intentional about maintaining my focus, because every time I've lost focus, I've lost consistency. And every time you lose consistency, things fall apart. You and I, as EntreMusicians, have to be very focused on. That's why I believe Stephen Covey's habit, which says, I don't know which habit it was of the 7 Habits book, but begin with the end in mind. I think that's number 1. Begin with the end in mind. In every project that you put forth, begin with what's the goal? Where am I headed? And then back time from there. What do I need to do now that I'm trying to reach that particular goal? And so don't lose focus, and it can be easy to do. I can tell you, as musicians, because we're really very emotional, we're thinking about the art, we're thinking about how it's making us feel, we're thinking about, you know, just the nuances of what that music is saying to us, what that lyric is speaking to us at that time. But we have to marry constantly the art and the commerce in order to get to the next step. So that's my 7 major mistakes that I found that I've made as a band leader in my career, and I hope that you can learn from that and not make the same mistakes. Now, what about you? I'm sure I've left something out, or I'm sure because of your personality style, there are some other things that you would say, hey, this is a major mistake, don't do this. And let's put it in the comment box below and then create this dialogue. I also want you to go over to the EntreMusician.com. That is the community that we're building. It's building slower than I wanted to build, but hey, it's okay. It's building, and people are coming aware of what we're trying to do there. And we're there to engage, encourage, and empower other EntreMusicians to really network, to really connect, to really share resources and information where we can build each other up. Because as we do that, we can only become stronger and stronger. And that's what we should be doing as EntreMusicians. Hey, listen, thank you for joining me today. My name is Jere B. I am the EntreMusician, and so are you. We'll see you next time.